Welcome back to our tour of all 41 towns in the 5th Congressional District in 41 days. Today, Jesse and I, who's holding the camera, knocked doors here in Brookfield. It's a Saturday afternoon, a little bit of a rainy Saturday afternoon, but we had some great response here today. As you can see, people are out in their yards mowing, even though the ground's a little wet. I had a really interesting conversation with Mr. Landalis, who's on Crestview Drive here in Brookfield, and he talked about his frustration with the fact that Connecticut's gas prices are higher, amongst the highest in the nation. And we had a really interesting discussion on why that is. And he was advocating for some greater federal regulation on gas prices. And it's an interesting dynamic. And we had a great conversation about how sometimes when the federal government intervenes and tries to insert itself into a market, it actually can potentially make it worse. I'd argue that the healthcare market is a good example of that. The Medicare drug benefit that the federal government put into action, they set up rules designed for that Medicare drug benefit to fail. One of the things I worry about when we talk about regulating oil prices is that we might actually make the situation worse. But his point was well taken. There is no reason to have the disparity between gas prices that we have from Connecticut to the Midwest and to the South. And the fact that Congress is doing nothing about it was really what lied behind his frustrations. And we hear that a lot when we knock doors, especially out in a town like Brookfield, where people here are obviously doing a lot of commuting down to Danbury, New Milford, maybe even Waterbury, where people work. It's something you hear. It's something you hear a lot. So, and then we ended at the end of a cul-de-sac here, where I heard a familiar refrain. A gentleman was very supportive, and he looked at me and he said, "You got a tough road ahead of you. I'm voting for you, but good luck." And it reminded me of the first time I ran for office against a 14-year incumbent back in 1998, when everybody said, you know, you don't have a shot to beat this guy, but I'll vote for you. And you hear a bit of that out here. You hear people saying, I'm so ready for a change. I don't know if you can beat somebody who's been there for 24 years, but I'll be with you. We hear that over and over and over again. That people may think that it's an uphill battle, but they're ready for a change, and we heard that today here in Brookfield. So signing off today in Brookfield, and on to New Milford. All right, hello, and welcome to the next installment in our tour of all 41 towns of the 5th Congressional District in 41 days. Today we went in Javier's neighborhood here in New Milford, and we actually had a pretty amazing response.
Yeah, definitely.
Saturday afternoon, tough, people in and out, but we probably the most interesting house we went to was the last house. We talked to the Shaws, who are at the end. What was the street that we were on? Was it Old?
Oh, gee, it was
Lone Oak.
Lone Oak. That's right, Lone Oak. Thank you, cameraman Jesse. We were on Lone Oak. We did so many streets today. So we're at the end of a cul-de-sac on Lone Oak, and we meet this couple who are pulling in right as we're coming to the door of the Shaws. And Mr. Shaw is a mason, and he's struggling to get work in the area, in part because of the influx of undocumented workers.
Two kids.
Two kids. And what do you say he's paying for in insurance?
About $300 a week.
$300 a week for insurance for his family, because as a sole proprietor, he's got to pay for it himself. So you add on the cost of insurance, the cost of his mortgage, a guy and a family playing by the rules, and just not being able to make ends meet. And if you want to talk about why we're doing this and why we're coming out, going door to door, talk to the Shaws. It's those folks that are struggling under the huge weight, healthcare bills, energy costs. Well, the drug companies, insurance companies, oil companies are all making millions, billions. That's why we're doing this, and that's why I'm running. So, and one other person we heard that was interesting was the guy who talked about Nancy+Johnson's ads.
Yeah, definitely. The attitude, the how she can be there for 24 years and not be able to talk about a record.
That's right. And he said, it was a thing that turned him off, was that he saw those negative ads and said that was enough. And we hear a lot of that frustration. We heard a lot of it here in New Milford. So it was great to end on, I think, what was a hopeful note. The Shaws, the quintessential family, showing us why we're out here doing this, fighting for working families and middle-class families like the Shaws here in New Milford. So signing off for Javier and I, we had a great day out here along with Jesse and Gail, knocking the streets of New Milford. And we'll get you next time as we start to get into the 9th and 10th and 11th towns on our tour of 41 towns in 41 days.